What happens when your next door neighbor is basically a wife in training, and the other girl literally won't leave you alone? Today, we're talking about The Angel Next Door Spoils Me Rotten and Kubo Won't Let Me Be Invisible. These anime were recommended to me as part of the Anicord event, where we get assigned anime, manga, light novels, and more to check out. If you're interested, details are in the description. I just want to mention all of the awesome support I got on the last video. Pretty massive numbers for my channel. You know what else is massive? I'm sorry, that wasn't funny. But seriously, I appreciate all of the support. Now, of course, I can't continue without mentioning the wonderful and fantastic staff of the Anicord server. Before I begin, spoiler warning, if you haven't seen either of these anime or one but not the other, there will be chapters in the video. In my last video, I briefly mentioned my thoughts about rom-coms. Most, if not all, are very prone to the tropes that make up the genre, which just gets repetitive and boring to watch after a while. Don't get me wrong, I think there are some great rom-com anime out there, but the majority are different concept, same execution. And yeah, I still feel that way, pretty strongly. But this time, I wanted to keep an open mind since I'm reviewing two rom-coms. While it is fun to be a professional hater, I wanted to keep this review positive. So let's start where any anime sets the tone. It's music. Rom-com openings don't usually get me hyped, except Love is War, of course, but this one? Absolute banger. The vocalist from Okuto absolutely kills it. Hearing a really good opening just gets you all the more excited to watch the anime. Unfortunately, the excitement stops there, because the endings are not my thing. This is really common in a lot of rom-coms. They get the main love interest voice actress to sing the opening or ending, and I think I've yet to hear one I've thoroughly enjoyed. I'm not saying they're bad singers, but every single one of those songs has a very distinct sound, and they all kinda sound the same. The endings match the anime's tone quite a bit more. They're very peaceful and sweet, which is exactly what the anime is. They're kind of the opposite of the opening with its energetic vibe and liveliness, but I'm not complaining. It's a really fun song. We've talked about tone, but what truly brings an anime's atmosphere and emotions to life? The soundtrack. The soundtrack, composed by Moe Hyuga, is pretty good. It's very laid back and mellow, nothing too crazy. Fun fact, Hyuga also worked on the soundtrack for Steins Gate Zero, and considering both Steins Gate series have amazing soundtracks, that's pretty epic. This soundtrack doesn't get too dramatic or overpowering, but it works in its favor, reinforcing the anime's comforting atmosphere and perfectly complementing its tone. It also nails the fun, lighthearted moments just as well as the more gentle ones. While the soundtrack sets the atmosphere, the production is what brings the anime to life. This anime was produced by Project Number 9, which isn't really known for its animation or anything, apparently. I've hardly seen any of their other works other than Higehiro, and it was okay from what I remember. This animation is about the standard for most rom-coms. It's not terrible, but it doesn't stand out all that much. The animation itself is stiff with static backgrounds and lackluster movement. Sometimes the animation can look not great, but I think this is partially budgetary restrictions and also not having a large animation team. That being said, the warm colors and clean art do fit the overall warm and easygoing vibe of the anime, and that same vibe carries over the characters and story. As far as the cast of characters, this anime keeps it to a minimum. Amane isn't a very interesting character by himself. Oftentimes, his low self-esteem contributes to his lack of socialization and neglect of his health. So, having other characters interact with him is absolutely necessary to keep things interesting. Mahiru has an exterior of being this perfect person, but truthfully, she's guarded and distant from others. People often refer to her as an angel, seeing her effortless achievements, but behind the scenes, she works tirelessly to achieve that kind of praise. Mahiru is the opposite of Amane in some aspects. She's self-sufficient, confident in her abilities, and works hard to achieve success, only giving Amane a peek into who she truly is. But I literally cannot stand how rom-coms put the love interest on a pedestal, like the GOAT levels of glaze. It's not that they're bad characters, just chill out with the glaze, dude. And this trope is in basically every rom-com I've ever seen. But wait, there's more. Here are two other tropes that get on my nerves. When characters who are obviously in love act like complete strangers in front of other people. You're not fooling anyone, bud, and it just makes things awkward. And then watching half the series where both characters are dropping the most obvious hints while pretending to be an absolute moron, that gets frustrating pretty quickly. But let's be honest, this isn't too much of a complaint regarding only this anime. The one specific change I wish was made is having more setting variation. We hardly see any of the characters interact outside of Amane's apartment, which is the central space of the story about 90% of the time. It's not like it's terrible, but some different settings could have made interactions or situations more interesting. Mahiru and Amane complement each other well, and I think that's what makes them a great couple. Mahiru helps Amane get his mess of a life together, helping him improve his lifestyle and self-worth. Amane does the same and helps Mahiru realize she doesn't have to be so hard on herself and seek perfection and validation. One of the most important things about this anime was the voice acting. You can't expect a ton of energy and liveliness, especially when the two leads' personalities aren't representative of that. And I think their performances work well for this kind of slow, wholesome vibe they were going for, but sometimes the energy just didn't feel all quite there, so I would lose a little engagement in certain scenes. Some scenes just didn't have the weight they should have had to make it feel more impactful. It didn't ruin the experience, it just felt like they were reading dialogue instead of their normal interactions. Itsuki and Chitose are pretty decent characters. They bring some energy and comedic banter, and they are actually together. You rarely see an anime where side characters are in a relationship. Other than them, nobody else contributed all that much besides Amane's parents and Yuta, but he shows up in the 8th episode. With such a small cast, it's just the main characters driving the story forward. So, does the plot make the most of them? The story plays out similarly to most other cookie-cutter rom-coms. A loner guy who thinks he's a loser, but isn't, meets a girl everyone thinks is perfect, but isn't. Some circumstance throws them together, but they learn to accept each other's imperfections and grow as people. And obviously, they fall in love. Is it a bad thing to be a cookie-cutter anime? That depends on the preference. Do you just want a nice, wholesome story, or are you looking for something that breaks the boundaries of the rom-com genre? If you're looking for the latter, you won't find it here. Does that mean that the anime isn't worth watching? No, I don't think so. It's a sweet story, and personally, it's refreshing from the last rom-com I watched. While sometimes the best anime do think and operate outside of the box, some tend to go too far, affecting the story, its characters, and overall enjoyment of the series. I think sometimes being a cookie-cutter anime can have its benefits and be refreshing. Well, that just about covers everything. So where does that leave The Angel Next Door Spoils Me Rotten? At the end of the day, The Angel Next Door Spoils Me Rotten doesn't break the mold of the rom-com genre, but it doesn't need to. It's wholesome, enjoyable, and does exactly what it sets out to do. While it plays things safe, it lands some great character moments and delivers a wholesome story. After everything, my final score for The Angel Next Door Spoils Me Rotten is a 7.5 out of 10. But what do you think? Did this anime do enough to stand out, or is it just another boring rom-com? Let me know in the comments. We've all seen the shy, reserved guy in rom-coms, but what if he's straight up invisible to the people around him? Going into this anime, I expected the same old rom-com formula, but did it actually do something different? To figure that out, let's start where an anime's tone is set: the music. Rom-coms can be surprising with their openings and endings. Some are unique and fun, and some are just there. They serve as the perfect introduction to the anime's tone and setting, especially when they're catchy and energetic, but unfortunately, you won't find that here. The opening and ending themes are sweet and soft, but they don't really stand out much. The opening follows the familiar trend of having the female love interest voice actress sing, but it's not very energetic or catchy. The ending is in the same boat. Sweet, but not something I'll be playing non-stop for days. Funnily enough, the band Dialogue Plus made the opening for Higehiro, produced by Project Number 9. Still, the music fits the vibe and it's not out of place. It captures the anime's wholesome nature quite well. While the music sets the tone, the soundtrack adds another layer that breathes the anime's atmosphere to life. The soundtrack, composed by Kujira Yumemi, is energetic and fun, and its upbeat themes lend themselves perfectly to the goofy moments. This is great because this anime is meant to be lighthearted and wholesome, and the soundtrack does just that, while also being soft and heartfelt for gentle or emotional scenes. It's a nice balance, and I was pleasantly surprised by it. We've covered the heart of an anime, but what gives it life? The production. This anime was produced by Pine Jam and directed by Kazuo Mikoga. If you're familiar with his work, you may recognize Koga as the director of the hit series Rent-A-Girlfriend. Yeah, that didn't exactly inspire confidence jumping into this series, but I'm happy to say Kubo Won't Let Me Be Invisible surprised me, and so did the production. The animation is expressive, and while not insanely fluid, it's also not a PowerPoint presentation. I really like how expressive this anime is, especially with the characters' facial expressions. A lot of the humor lands because the anime leans into its expressiveness. The art style really makes this anime stand out, and everything in this anime is visually appealing. Although sometimes you'll see a lot of the background characters don't have faces at all. There will always be budgetary and staff restrictions, especially for a studio that primarily produces rom-coms, but for Pine Jam as a studio, I'd say this is solid. Character designs are clean and soft and contribute to the anime's appealing art style. Animation and visuals can bring a story to life, but that doesn't mean much if the characters fall flat. So, how does the cast hold up? I really enjoy Junta as a character. He's invisible, but he's also not socially awkward, which isn't something you'd expect. He can hold conversations with Nagisa and doesn't stumble over his words. His biggest issue is he's just shy. Junta doesn't want to interject or put himself out there because he's afraid of being a bother. Even when Junta meets new people like Pseudo, he's obviously still very shy, but willing to be social. Of course, there are going to be some social cues Junta can't pick up on, but that's because he's not social with many people. And even though people don't notice Junta, he still has a positive outlook on life. It's not like he's antisocial or some shut-in, he's just used to being ignored. Junta's voice actor Kengo Kawanishi does a great job capturing his shyness without sounding too timid. But let's talk about Seita because it is a matter of life or death. This may just be one of the most adorable anime characters I've ever seen. Maria Issei's performance brings Seita's adorableness to life, and it's a scene stealer every time. Junta's relationship with Seita is one of my favorite aspects. Despite being socially reserved, Junta's still a caring, great brother. Nagisa is a great counter to Junta. She's outgoing, smart, and well-liked, but she's not this character that everyone worships. And thank God, every rom-com has it, but luckily this one didn't. She teases Junta, but it allows him to open up and be more confident in himself. What really sells Nagisa's teasing as friendly rather than mean-spirited is Kana Hanazawa's delivery. She has a playful yet affectionate vibe. Nagisa's friends Hazuki and Tama are a fun duo, and their interactions and banter with Nagisa were fun to watch. Akina and Saki are okay. I don't mind them, they just don't really push the story too much, but their banter and dynamic are pretty fun as well. Even the side characters' voice actors seem to be having a blast, which made every character and their interactions even more enjoyable. What truly brings the story to life, though, are the characters and their dynamic. But does the plot do enough to stand out from the rom-com formula we all know so well? This isn't some innovative story that blows you away. It's simple and basic, but that doesn't by any means mean that it's a bad story. Junta is the classic shy guy, often not given any attention due to his invisibility. Nagisa is the only one who recognizes him, and while she does tease him, it allows him to open up more from his quiet and reserved nature. I think what makes this rom-com fun, even with the basic story, is that its characters are solid and not a pain in the to watch. A lot of times, the popular rom-coms tend to be aggressive with their tropes, and while some do it for a reason, often parodying it, it can be very exhausting to watch if it was meant to be that way originally. I'm not interested in seeing the main character get bullied by his love interest that doesn't really feel like she's interested. Sure, this anime has tropes, plenty of them, but they aren't as aggressive as some other anime are. For me, I like the laid-back and wholesome stories that aren't filled with really sad backstories or moments that make it not feel like a rom-com. It's not a groundbreaking story, but that's okay. Not every anime has to be complicated or exceed your expectations. What matters is that it's fun, wholesome, and lighthearted. And with those in mind, Kubo Won't Let Me Be Invisible definitely delivers. Overall, Kubo Won't Let Me Be Invisible isn't a story I'll be talking about for weeks, or recommending to everyone. But for the people who enjoy a nice, fun rom-com, I think this is a perfect example. Sometimes you just want a good, simple rom-com, and Kubo Won't Let Me Be Invisible nails it. With all of that in mind, my final rating of Kubo Won't Let Me Be Invisible is a 7.75 out of 10. But what did you think of Kubo Won't Let Me Be Invisible? Did it pull on your heartstrings, or is it just another plain old rom-com? I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. It's hard to say this with authenticity, but if you could like, share, and subscribe, it would really mean a lot to me. I'd really like to start posting more videos regularly, not just during big events, and definitely not every 3 months. If you guys have any recommendations and want to hear my thoughts, leave a comment and I'll do my best to pick them out. Maybe I'll spin a wheel or something, I don't know. We'll see. Hope you guys enjoyed the video.